I would like to introduce our speaker, Tony Margarit. Tony's a finance leader in the crypto and blockchain industry with 15 years of experience working with startups and high-growth companies. He currently leads the finance and operations department for Electric Coin Company. And he's also the co-creator of the Blockchain Association's Tax Accounting and Bookkeeping Best Practices Working Group. Tony will help educate us today on cryptocurrencies and the blockchain. I know many of you are like me, like trying to get our heads around it. It's kind of fun talking to him a little bit over lunch. I asked him to leave a little time to answer some questions that you guys may have. Tony strongly believes in the benefits of decentralization, permissionless transactions, and true ownership of assets. Please welcome Tony Margarit.
Well, thanks for the intro, Kurt. Like I said, my name's Tony Margarit. I am a Bloomington native, born and raised. Lived here my whole childhood till I went to college. My parents lived here about 8 years after I went off to college, and they've since moved about a decade ago. But great memories of Bloomington. My dad was a member of the Daymaker Rotary Club, so good memories of that too. Happy to be back. So I'm here to talk to you guys about crypto and blockchain today. So we'll get started. All right, first off, quick disclaimer. Nothing I say here is financial advice, of course. This is all just for informational, educational purposes. Sometimes I like to say I am a CPA, or I was in a past life, but I'm not your CPA. So we'll just had to get that one out of the way. So my background. I started my career as a CPA. In public accounting, spent 5 years with the firm Clifton Larson Allen, CLA. Maybe some of you have heard of it. Since then, I've been in controller, CFO roles for high growth companies, things like esports, software as a service, SaaS companies, if you're familiar with, a lot of tech type companies, and crypto, of course. I was previously the head of finance at a Web3 ticketing company. And we'll get into what Web3 means, blockchain, crypto, kind of different terminology. But essentially that company was trying to disrupt the traditional Ticketmaster model using the benefits of blockchain and crypto as the underlying infrastructure. Since the last about 15 months or so, I've been running finance and operations at Electric Coin Company. We are focused on privacy, and we'll get into that towards the end of the presentation. Why privacy is important, what are some of the implications of as we move to this more digital world, with public blockchains, public ledgers, transactions are public, balances are public. What are some of the implications of that, and why privacy is important? So I've been involved in crypto for over a decade now, which is pretty ancient in the crypto space. Back when I used to tell people about it 10 years ago, they just thought I was speaking a different language, thought I was crazy. I probably was. But now it's hit its kind of mainstream moment. People at least might not understand exactly what it is, but most people are aware of it. They've heard the terms crypto, they've heard blockchain, they've heard Bitcoin. I've been, an investor, advisor with some companies, some startups, and now I've ran finance at a couple different companies. All right, so we're gonna start off with a quick poll here, so we can kind of get a pulse of the audience. So who here owns crypto? You got 1, 2, awesome. Okay, great. Who here is confused about crypto? Okay, awesome. Yep, love it. Okay, cool. Well, hopefully I can clear up some of this confusion for you guys. Apologies in advance if I say some terms that you might not have heard before, don't make sense. Feel like I want this to be as interactive as possible, so feel free just to raise your hand, stop me, and I'm happy to elaborate on anything or clarify if there's any terms or things that you might not recognize. So please stop me when I get there. All right, so what is blockchain? Let's start there. So a blockchain is basically a digital ledger of of transactions, right? Think of it as like a secure, shared digital ledger that no one person controls, like a shared Google Doc. Everyone can see it, but no one can secretly edit it. So everyone can see it, but no one can change it in secret. So a few terms that get thrown out with blockchains are up top here: distributed and decentralized. So decentralized, the opposite of centralized. So like, there's no central party that controls the blockchain. There's no, CEO of Bitcoin. There's no one who controls, who says yes or no to transactions. It's decentralized. In the case of Bitcoin, there are millions of people around the world all contributing to the network. No one person owns it. No one person gets to say, yes, we're gonna accept this transaction, or no, we're not gonna accept this transaction. No one person gets to say, we're gonna do this software upgrade or not. It has to be achieved through consensus, through the majority of participants around the world. All have to agree on something in order to make a change. Pros and cons of that, right? Sometimes it's nice to have a CEO and a leader who just makes the decision and does things, but Bitcoin and most blockchains are decentralized. Permissionless, I kind of touched on that, but there's no one, I don't have to ask permission to send a transaction on Bitcoin or on most blockchains. Like with my bank account, people might not think this, but when I want to send you money, I have to ask my bank permission to send my money to you. They can say no. They have said no. I was just chatting earlier. If I wanted to go withdraw all the cash in my bank account right now, they would not let me. They don't, fractional reserve lending. We'll get into that, but banks don't store all the cash. You deposit cash into a bank, it's a liability on their books. They owe it back to me, but they take that cash and they lend it out 10 times over, 100 times over. They don't keep the cash and just sit there. So, preview of where we're going. But open source, also like the Bitcoin source code is out. It is 100% public. Anyone can go see it. Anyone can propose changes to it. Anyone can look at it. That is why it is one big reason why it's so well trusted, because if there was a bug, if there was a backdoor, if there was something wrong in the code, you have millions of people looking at it every single day. Likely it would have been found. Not saying it's perfect and there's no chance that there's a bug in it, but the code is open source. Anyone is able to look into it. I'm not an engineer by trade, but there are tons of smart blockchain engineers that have looked at this code, and clearly they haven't seen an issue with it. So that gives people confidence, as opposed to a lot of software is closed source today. Apple, right? Apple is closed source. You can't go see what's going on underneath the hood of your iPhone. They keep that close to the vest as a company. And then bottom one here, digital ledgers. Most of them are public or what I'll call transparent, but some of them are private, and that's what my company works on. So we'll get into that towards the end, but just know that those are kind of the two main items there. Also, one quality I didn't put up here was immutable. The blockchains are immutable, meaning if something happens, if I send a transaction, it can't be reversed. There's no chargeback like a credit card. Once a transaction is sent, and it's been broadcast to all the other participants around the world, you can't take it back. It is out there forever. Again, pros and cons to that. That's why a lot of people get a little scared. If I send a Bitcoin to the wrong address, I can't just say, call up anyone. There's no help desk. I can't say, I sent it, can you refund me? I sent it to the wrong address. I need it back. It has been sent. All right, so a few terms that you guys might have heard that are pretty common, and try to clarify them a little bit for you. But so there's blockchain, there's crypto, there's maybe you've heard of Web3. So I like to think of blockchain as just the underlying technology, the underlying infrastructure, right? Bitcoin, there's the Bitcoin blockchain, there's the Ethereum blockchain, as we'll get into. There are different blockchains, but overall, blockchain is a chain of transactions. It's the underlying technology that that kind of runs this whole system. Most of the time when people refer to crypto, they're talking about the digital assets themselves. Like I said, Bitcoin, the ticker is BTC. That's the biggest and the first. Ethereum, that ticker's ETH, pronounced ETH, not ETH. That's the second biggest crypto asset, and there's a lot of differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum, those are the two main ones we'll focus on. And also Web3 Web3 essentially means like the third generation of the internet. That's maybe less common than if you guys have heard of that, but when I mentioned I worked for a Web3 ticketing company before, it was taking the ticketing, the legacy ticketing companies and moving them into third generation of the internet. So third generation of the internet, there's a great VC who wrote a book called Read, Write, Own at Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, but they're big in the crypto space. But Read, Write, Own is kind of his analogy of the generations of the internet. Like the first generation of the internet, when I think of that, it was basically used as an online encyclopedia. It's like Wikipedia. You go, you research things, right? You're reading stuff. You're getting information. The second generation of the internet was you get to write, you get to do blogs, you get to post on Facebook and Instagram, and you get to create stuff. You're actually contributing to the internet. And now the third generation of the internet is ownership. You get to own your digital assets. So we'll talk about that. But that's a good way to, again, these aren't really hard and fast definitions, but I think this helps kind of frame when you hear the terms, blockchain versus crypto versus Web3, this is how I like to look at it. So let's start with Bitcoin. I'm assuming most of you guys have heard of Bitcoin, at least vaguely familiar with it. So we're going to go over a little bit of the history here. So this is Bitcoin published a white paper. That was how this all kicked off back on Halloween 2008. This is the title of the white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It was written by Satoshi Nakamoto. Have you guys heard that name? So this picture on the right is not actually him. It's a commonly used image. It's a statue that depicts the creator of Bitcoin. But Satoshi was the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin. He had his username, Satoshi. He had his email address. But no one knows who he, she, or they is, was, are, or were. No one has any idea if it's one person, if it's a guy, if it was a girl, if it was multiple people, if it was a government intelligence agency. There are a lot of theories out there, and a lot of people have spent a lot of time analyzing this to figure out who Satoshi was or is. Because Satoshi today still owns over 1 million Bitcoin in his or her publicly available wallets. As I said, Bitcoin balances are all public. Everyone can see them. He owns 1 million Bitcoin. They have not moved ever. That's $112 billion, $115 billion. If he was alive, there's a good chance he would have moved it at some point, but he is not. I use he. It's not, I have no idea if it's like I said, man, woman, or a group of people. But I mean, the research into this is crazy. A lot of people have looked into writing styles and what time zones did he post on. Because he used to post in these forums back in the day. He used to send emails, and he did 2 spaces after the period when he was typing. So people theorized what that meant, and it's just but he posted a lot that I think that lined up with more. I think it was Russian time zones, or it was, but he really posted kind of all over different time zones. So people a lot tend to think maybe it was a group. But anyways, it's just interesting to note that he's a pseudonymous creator. And that's, again, why so many people love Bitcoin. He created this, stuck around for a little bit, and then disappeared. And the code is immutable. The code, it runs itself. There's no CEO. There's no leader. So we'll go over the timeline in a second. But what did Satoshi do? So as you can see, I'll just read the first sentence. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Kind of like I said, no third-party intermediary, no one that can give you permission to spend your own money. So Satoshi solved what's called the double spend problem. How do I know if I send Kurt $1 I'm not turning around really quick and sending the same dollar to Sarah. That is a really complicated cryptographic problem that people have been trying to solve for decades. He solved it and combined a bunch of other technology that had been in these cryptographic circles from years and years and honestly decades prior, all leading up to this. Satoshi solved it, published in the Bitcoin white paper. Bitcoin is secured by, it's called a proof of work consensus mechanism. So when I say there are millions of people or computers all over the world that are contributing to the network, they're doing what's called mining. So mining is essentially, it's like trying to solve a puzzle, a really complicated puzzle, but the only way to solve it is by trial and error, just by guessing. You can't figure it out. You just have to guess and guess and guess and guess really fast and really many times. So the more guesses that people are required to guess and guess and guess to solve this puzzle, the stronger the network is, because the more computers have to come online to try to solve this. And I'm going to give you guys a number. Does anyone, guess how many, and they're called hashes, right? So the hash, the guess, when I say guess, I mean hash. So guess how many hashes per second secure the Bitcoin network today? Meaning how many people around the world are guessing every second to try to solve this puzzle to mine the next block of Bitcoin? Does anyone want to throw out a big number?
Like 1 billion.
Good start. Anyone else? So today it's over 1,100 exahashes per second. So an exahash is, so take the number 1,100, add 18 zeros after that. So it's 1,100 billion, which is 1.1 trillion, then times a billion again. So it's just an insane number of computing power that is supporting the Bitcoin network right now. So it's 1 trillion, which is an astronomically big number, then times a billion every second. That's how many guesses every second at trying to solve this puzzle. So when people say, oh, couldn't a bunch of people get their computers together, get these machines together and take over the Bitcoin network, it's really not possible, short of getting, the US and some other countries to use all their compute power to all team up and try to attack the network. It's essentially impossible to do what's called a 51% attack is in order to attack the network, you'd have to get 51% of the compute to override the rest of the computing power. So a lot of big words there, but essentially it's an insane amount of computing power backs up the Bitcoin network, and it's almost impossible to even fathom how someone would get control of the network. Okay, so quick timeline. Like I said, 2008, the white paper was published. 2009 was the Genesis block, meaning the first ever Bitcoin block came out into the world. Satoshi published a message. You can publish messages in these blocks. He published a message. It said, "The Times, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks," was his message. So this was when they were going to bail out the banks again, kind of setting the tone for Bitcoin as this is in response to the bank bailouts. I'm not a fan of these government handouts where they the banks privatize the gains, socialize the losses. This is as a response to that. 2010, you may have heard of the infamous pizza transaction. Everyone ever heard of that? So this was like the first, they celebrate it every year. I think it's May 22nd. The first kind of proof of Bitcoin as a currency, someone on one of the chat boards was trying to pay someone for pizza using Bitcoin, trying to prove that it could be used as a currency. No one would take him up on it. Finally, someone took him up on it. For 2 pizzas, he paid a guy to go pick up 2, I think it was Papa John's pizzas, and deliver it to him. He paid him 10,000 Bitcoin. At the time, worth $41. Today, worth $1.2 billion. He was begging people to do it. No one would take him up on it. Unfortunately, the guy he paid quickly sold those off once they got to, I think a few $100s, and those Bitcoins have changed hands a lot over time, but it's just because you can see this stuff on the blockchain, but pretty crazy. They know who it was. The guy doesn't regret it. He says he's happy he did it. He never would have kept him anyways. He's happy to contribute to the Bitcoin lore. 2011, Satoshi's final words. He wrote a blog post in 2011. I think it was in April. He said his last quote was, "I've moved on to other things." This is his final quote, April 2011. No one has seen or heard from him or her or them since. So that's 14 years ago. And like we said, none of the coins have ever moved. He's never spent them. They've never moved. If they moved, all chaos would break out. I don't know that we'll ever see them move. There's some things like quantum computing, et cetera, but that's scope for a different topic. And then 2020s, we've really seen institutional adoption now in the 2020s. The ETFs have come on board. You guys may have seen, Fidelity and BlackRock have these huge ETFs. BlackRock's IBIT, that's their Bitcoin ETF, has become the fastest growing ETF to reach every milestone by a factor of like 10 or 100. I think it just almost nicked 100 billion this week. I don't even know what the next fastest is to reach 100 billion. It's not even close. It's smashing all the records. People are piling into it. But today at the bottom I did put, Bitcoin is now really seen as a store of value. It's no longer really used as a currency. That was a design architecture that people took several years ago, and it's now seen more as a digital gold versus I'm going to go pay you in Bitcoin. People still do transact in Bitcoin, but when the network gets busy and congested, the fees get really expensive, and so it's more seen as a store of value. So we're going to focus a little bit on this store of value, that's the SOV, and purchasing power, because this is a really important piece, and probably what turned me on to Bitcoin originally was when I started to understand monetary policy and things like purchasing power. So, everyone talks about the value of my stock portfolio is increasing, the value of my house is increasing, the value of everything's going, the price of everything's going up, right? Inflation. But what is, and I know this is kind of a way to reframe people's thinking, and this might seem weird or not make sense at first, but what is more likely, that the price of everything is just always going up and to the right? Like if you look at it over decades, the price of everything go up. Compare anything when you guys were younger, when you were kids, to the price of that, to the price now. Yeah, they fluctuate. Some things went up a little more than others. Well, what's more likely? The price of everything just going up always, or the value of what you're measuring it is actually just going down and the values are staying somewhat constant? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here. So I know that the framing, I'll show you some good images we have. That framing, just think of that, like, is the US dollar really just getting less valuable every year? Or is every single thing, millions and millions of different goods and services and everything, all getting more expensive every year? Or is it just the one thing, the denominator, is just gradually getting less and less valuable every year when they're printing currency? Like, that's the thing about Bitcoin. It has a hard cap of 21 million. I somehow forgot to mention that. There's only ever going to be 21 million. It cannot be more. So as the US dollar, what is the cap? There is no cap. It's infinity. They can print as much as they want forever, and they will, because that's what every fiat currency in history has done. They just print and print and print, and we are in debt. We get in more debt. We print more money to pay off the debt. That turns into more debt, and it's a vicious cycle. So, again, most people don't care about, when it comes down to it, you don't really care about the number of digits on the screen in your bank account. You care about what you can buy with that money, what you can do with it. It's not about the digits themselves. If I had $1 billion in my bank, but a house costs $2 billion, that's not, it's not $1 billion isn't that cool if it doesn't buy me much. Okay, here's a good one. 1929, 10 kilograms of gold. Sorry if it's a little small. Cost about $6,600. The median price home was $4,900. So 10 kilograms of gold bought you, an average house above the median price, a nice average house. Fast forward 95 years later, 2024, 10 kilograms of gold costs $756,000. Median price home, $384,000. So again, 10 kilograms of gold in 2024 buys you a nice average above the median price home. But guess what? In dollar terms, it went up almost 100x. But gold, it didn't change. Another example is the tailored suit example. 1 ounce of gold in 1910, I think, was $20. A nice custom tailored suit in 1910 was $20. We'll go with last year because gold, I'm sure you guys have seen gold has been exponential this year. Last year, an ounce of gold was $2, maybe $3 grand. A nice tailored suit, $2, maybe $3 grand. It didn't change. But the dollar amount, it went up 100 times in US dollars. Gold, it didn't change. So did the suit and the gold didn't change, but the dollar lost 99% of its value. I know this is a different way of looking at things, but it's a really important one. Here's a couple good examples. Priced in Bitcoin. 2015, the median house. I had Bitcoin in 2015. Would have cost me 1,300 Bitcoin to buy a house in 2015. 2020 would have cost me 28 Bitcoin to buy a house. Today, 3.8 Bitcoin to buy a median house. So if you own Bitcoin, look at that. Everyone complains about housing prices are going up and up and up and they're so expensive. Well, if you own Bitcoin, it's down 99% in the last 10 years. So what's really changing here? Another good one, the iPhone. When the iPhone launched, the 2011 launch, I don't know, iPhone launched in 07, so this would have probably been iPhone 4 or so. It was 162 Bitcoin. The 2017 launch was 0.193 Bitcoin, and the 2025 launch, 0.0072 Bitcoin. So, as you can see, but guess what? Every year that iPhone's going up by $100. So is the iPhone getting more valuable, or is the dollar just getting less valuable? Here's another chart for you guys. US dollar purchasing price, or purchasing power, from 1971 to today based on M2 growth. M2 is the measure the country's money supply, like checking accounts, saving accounts, some money market accounts, etc. But just your $1 in 1971 is now worth 31 cents today. It's lost 70% of its purchasing power just since 1971. 70%. Now, it's a pretty drastic chart. It's even worse if you go back, 100 years. This is only back to 1971. So why did I pick on 1971? This is a very key date across the Bitcoin, the macroeconomics circles. No raise of hands here, but some of you might have been alive in 1971. Anyone remember the big event that happened there? That's right. President Nixon temporarily suspended the convertibility of the US dollar into gold. Like all good things the government does, it was temporary. It's just like the income tax in 1913. That's temporary to fund World War I, and I'm still paying that today in 2025. Exactly. So now the US dollar is no longer tied to gold. So what happened? Here's CPI from 1775. Flat all the way through World War II. Little uptick here. 1971, hockey stick. That's just government reported CPI, hockey stick in 1971. Inflation went through the roof. Here's a good one. Campbell's condensed tomato soup. Hilarious, but this is a very good marker of inflation. Unlike many other products, the iconic #1 can of Campbell's condensed soup cannot easily hide the effects of inflation. It cannot shrink while keeping the same price like a lot of products do. I call that shrinkflation, right? I'll go to Costco. I used to get 18 paper towels for $15. Now I get 16 for $15. Then next year I get 14 for $15. They think you won't notice. I call it shrinkflation. You're getting less for the same price. Cans of tuna, right? They used to be, I swear, they were double the size back in the day. Now they're so thin. But anyways, look at this. 1898 to 1971. Campbell's soup was 10 cents. It did not change in, 73 years. Now it has exploded to $1.23 since 1971. It's 12x since then. Here we go. This chart actually starts in 1971. This is the SPX priced in gold, so the S&P 500 index. This is the S&P 500 since 1971 in dollars in red. And this is the S&P 500 in gold in blue. It is down 21%. This does not include dividends, so take it with a grain of salt. Dividends are not included in this. This is just the price. But look at gold. S&P measured in gold has been basically flat for 55 years. S&P in dollars has gone exponential. Said another way, 1 ounce of gold today buys you more units of the S&P 500 than 1 ounce of gold would have bought you in 1971, which is crazy because $1 today buys you 98% less S&P units than it would have in 1971. So the dollar purchasing power went down 98%. Gold stayed flat, actually went up a little bit. One more quick one here. So it's minimum wage statistics, right? On the left, it's a little small, but 1971 minimum wage was $1.60 per hour. 40 hours a week, that's $64 per week. That was almost 2 ounces of gold per week, minimum wage. An ounce of gold is over $4,000 today. That would mean minimum wage would be $8,000 per week, $400,000 per year, minimum wage, if the dollar kept up. That's exponential. Again, on the right, 1964, minimum wage is $1.25, which would have been 5 quarters. Some of you guys might remember quarters used to be silver, real silver. So you melt them down, you would get, 1925, yeah. So in 2025, 5 quarters would be worth $45 an hour. If just from the silver melt value, if they would have stayed the same from minimum wage in 1964 to today, minimum wage is nowhere close to $45. Okay, and then last one on this point, just gold versus stocks. Again, it's all about what's your measuring stick. When you use the US dollar as a measuring stick, everything goes up and to the right because the US dollar is in reality going down and to the right. It's just getting printed. It's getting devalued. There's more and more of them every year, every day, every month. And your share in the total US dollars isn't keeping up with with the total US dollars are out there. So this is just the equity index of the whole world without the US, and this is the equity index of the US. You can see since 2000, the black is the indexes in dollars, and the blue is index in gold. So since 2000, equities are going down in gold, measured in gold, and they're going up when measured in dollars. Again, hitting on the same point here. So this isn't a presentation on gold. But this monetary policy is super important to understand. It's a big piece of understanding Bitcoin, et cetera, and why it's important. So again, stop me at any point with any questions or any clarification, but we're going to move on to another really important characteristic of Bitcoin is self-custody. I'm able to custody the assets myself. No bank holds them, no exchange holds them, only I hold them. I don't, if Wells Fargo went down tomorrow, my cash, I wouldn't have any cash, right? But if anything happens tomorrow, I hold my own Bitcoin. It's like short of the internet, people think the internet going out, sure, maybe if the internet goes out, but if the internet goes out, they theorize that 95% of people will be dead within a week. So that's not, you don't have a way to get food, right? You don't have a way to get, you can't drive, you can't get gas, you can't, all these things. So a lot bigger problems if the internet goes out than have my Bitcoin. But there actually is a way to keep the Bitcoin blockchain going without internet. But again, topic for another conversation. But yeah, no third-party intermediary. It's a very important thing. No hands, but I don't know if anyone here was alive back in 1933, but some of you may have read about this. Executive order, FDR, made gold illegal in 1933, confiscated it all. Issued on April 5th, 1933, said everyone is required to turn in all their gold by May 1st, 1933 in the U.S. It is now illegal to own gold. Everyone turned it in, got paid $20 per ounce of gold. Guess what happened 8 months later, January 1934? The Gold Reserve Act was passed, valuing all gold at $35 per ounce. They lost 41% of their value overnight. They all turned it in for $20 an ounce. 8 months later, okay, just kidding. It's now worth $35 an ounce. Thanks for giving it to us at a huge discount, half off. People my age, we read about this stuff, and it's it's not unrealistic to think something like this happens again, whether it's with Bitcoin, whether it's with other assets. It has happened, and it might happen again. 1970, fast forward to 1975, Gerald Ford signs, reverses this 1933 ban. So gold was banned for 42 years in the U.S. It was illegal to own. For 1975, Gerald Ford reversed it. Here's a fun fact. Satoshi's birthday, his, her, they, them's birthday, was April 5th, 1975, the year that Gerald Ford said gold is now legal again. That is not a coincidence. That was intentional. There are a lot of clues that Satoshi left like this, referencing events. That is not at all a coincidence. So his birthday on his forums was April 5th, 1975. Yeah.
It actually just did happen about 2 months ago. It was, I think it's Botswana or Lesotho or one of those former South African independent protectorates decided that they wanted to have 25% ownership in Anglo-American's platinum, I think it was, rather than 10%. So they just declared, we're going to issue enough, you have to issue enough shares or we'll take it all, to go from 10 to 25. So it is not hypothetical.
You're exactly right. And I thought you almost took my next slide here, but yeah, this just happened too. I could list 100 of these examples that have happened in the last 5 or more years. People think it is hypothetical, but it is not. Vietnam just erased 86 million bank accounts. This was 4 weeks ago. People didn't comply with their digital ID. Vietnam said, okay, no, your bank account is gone. Again, think that's way over there. That's Vietnam, that's Southeast Asia. Sure, I've been there. I love Vietnam. That's so far away. It's not going to happen here. Well, what happened 3 years ago, just a few miles north of us? There was a protest in Canada. The truckers shut down the country. The people who gave $50 to the truckers to support their cause, to buy food, the grandmas who gave the truckers $50 on Venmo or on GoFundMe, Canada Prime Minister Justin Trudeau shut down their bank accounts, blacklisted them. They cannot get bank accounts. They cannot get credit cards. Think about what happens to you if you can't get a bank account. You can't get a credit card. You can't get a mortgage. You can't get loans. You can only pay in cash. I mean, you are in 2025 if you're blacklisted from getting a bank account, you can't do much. You can't really do anything. That kind of shuts you off from the whole world. So again, these are the things that just drive people into Bitcoin and why they believe in it. I don't want to trust the government. I don't want to trust, another third party, a bank that said, why does a bank get to say what I can and cannot do with my money? It's my money. In reality, when you give a bank your money, it's not your money anymore. It's a loan to them. Yeah.
I heard that in the UK, I don't know if it's in effect or if it's coming, that you cannot get a job if you don't have digital ID.
That the UK has been extremely tyrannical lately, most of the EU as well. We're almost there. I work for a privacy company, and there is no privacy in the UK. You are. I think that's right. I don't know. I don't want to 100% confirm it, but I think that's probably right. But I know, people are getting arrested for social media accounts for social media posts over there. You liked something, you posted something. There's a lot of that happening, and that's why this whole, privacy movement is becoming really important. Okay, so on to Ethereum. Have you guys heard of Ethereum? Is that a familiar term? Okay, awesome. So it's the second biggest crypto asset in the space after Bitcoin. So how is it different than Bitcoin? So where Bitcoin is more seen as a digital gold today, I like to think of Ethereum as kind of the next generation of the internet. It's like Web3. So ETH is the native currency on Ethereum. That's essentially fuel. Every time I do a transaction on Ethereum, I have to pay a little bit of ETH. It's called gas. So I pay a little bit of ETH. So it essentially functions as, you can build applications on top of Ethereum. Bitcoin is intentionally very simple. All you can really do is send coins to someone else. And that's by design. It's extremely secure. There's a very minimal attack surface. There's not much to attack there. It's very simple. I know it sounds complicated and stuff, but at the core level, all it knows is just sending balances to people. Less chance for bugs, less chance for attacks. ETH is what's called Turing complete. If there are any engineers in here might understand that term, but I can run programs and applications on top of Ethereum. You can do, essentially, you can kind of think of it as like running if functions in Excel, or like a bunch of nested if or some ifs or different functions, like if this, then that. And this gets into the terms like smart contracts, like legal agreements. Like in theory, I could buy a house on Ethereum, right? Like, and without a middleman, and you could write a smart contract to say, okay, when this person sends me $500,000, then I send them the deed to the house, and the money gets sent. Once the money is sent, the deed automatically transfers to the other person. There's no middleman. There's no third party. No one just to not do what they say. Another quality of these blockchains is they're trustless. I don't have to trust anyone. The code will do what it says. It's code. It doesn't have opinion, doesn't have feelings, doesn't have any of that. It just does what it's coded to do. So smart contracts. I mean, there are so many great examples, and we'll get into a few of them here, but you could create the next Uber or Airbnb on top of Ethereum, and just think about the Airbnb business model, right? It's just a matchmaking of people who have an open house or an open room to people who want an open house or an open room. And guess what? Airbnb is the middleman. They take 30% to pay their 10,000 employees and all their overhead. A lot of blockchain is cutting out the middleman. It's more efficient. There's no need to pay this huge organization, all this overhead infrastructure in the middle, when code can just execute the contracts by itself. Yeah, go ahead.
All these are transactions in Bitcoin. Talk about the process of converting Bitcoin to currency.
Sure. Yeah, we can chat on that quick. I like how you use currency too. I really like that because most people say money for the US dollar, and money implies a store of value. And as we just went over, there's no store of value in the US dollar. It is a currency. It is not money. Those terms get thrown around, but it's very important because gold can be considered money. It has a store of value. US dollar is a currency. But yeah, as far as that's where centralized parties come into play. If you want to convert your Bitcoin to US dollar, there are centralized exchanges like Coinbase, like Gemini. And that's where, you give up your identity, you link your bank account, then you send them your Bitcoin, they will give you US dollars for it. So it's a pretty smooth, straightforward process with these regulated exchanges, but you're giving up your identity. They can say no. They can say, nope, these Bitcoin were tied to a scam 5 years ago. We're not going to give you dollars for them. They're blacklisted. So there's a lot of, there are some issues with, again, you're trusting a third party. The best way would be if we all adopted a standard where we didn't have to convert to dollars, but that's probably a long ways off. Maybe not, but as far as converting to actual dollars, it's pretty straightforward these days with these regulated exchanges. Okay, so more, again, on Ethereum, you can run applications, you can do tokens, you can do what's called NFTs. An NFT means a non-fungible token. Fungibility is a key property of money. It means if I give Kurt $1, he can pay me back with a different dollar a year later. It doesn't have to be the same exact dollar. The dollars are fungible, they're interchangeable. NFTs mean they're not interchangeable. They're different, like a deed to a house would be an NFT. And yes, your deed to your house will be on the blockchain, no questions asked, within, 10 years for sure. Hopefully a lot sooner, but because it cuts out the middleman, it's a lot easier, it's more efficient. It's just easier to transact with them and easier than it's public information. Everyone knows who it is. No one can change it. No one can secretly edit it. But yeah, that would be an example of a non-fungible token. And there's other things like collectibles, right? Music. Some artists release music albums as an NFT, things like that. Also, Ethereum is secured by what's called proof of stake, not proof of work. I don't want to get into details here, but it's a little bit more of a different consensus mechanism. and I'm gonna try to speed up a little bit here because I know we're kind of running late on time. Apologies. I'm good, but if you guys have to leave, feel free to head out. But okay, so why do people care? Right? Already talked about this, but we'll dive into some more of the real world applications, real world use cases here. Digital gold, we covered that one. It's just a hedge against inflation. A currency, we'll cover this shortly, but Bitcoin started off as a currency, kind of went away from that model, but some projects are still believe in the currency model. I personally do, fast global private payments, right? If I want to pay a friend in Vietnam, has anyone tried to do that? An international wire has to go through at least one intermediary bank, if not two. It's going to take several days. It's at least $55. What if I just want to send them $20? I'm not going to pay $55 and wait a week through several banks, and they may or may not even let me do it in the first place. They'll probably ask me a bunch of questions. Why am I paying someone in Vietnam? But there's just such a better way to transfer money now. Tokenization, think tickets, think art, think real estate. Fractional ownership is awesome. Think right now, like, you guys ever looked into fine art? Picasso paintings go up like 20% or more every year in perpetuity, but you can't own one unless you have $10 million. What if you fractionalized that Picasso painting and made 10 million shares for $1 each? Now you can participate in that. I can buy 5 shares of a Picasso painting. I know it's going up 20% a year, and then I can own it and I can resell it. I mean, things like that. Multifamily housing and real estate, right? Multifamily is notoriously a great investment, but a lot of people, you might have to get a loan for 7-8 figures to invest in a big multifamily property. But if it's fractionalized, you could put $100 into multifamily and you could get share in the same returns without having to put up all the upfront capital. Supply chain transparency, whether it's like food safety stuff, food has to be kept at certain temperatures. You can document that on the blockchain along the way. So there are check-in points to say, yep, it was 30 degrees this day. It was 25 degrees this next hour. Like, there's all types of transparency, like medicine tracking. Voting and governance is huge. Elections, there are a lot of questioning our elections these days. Are they secure? How do you know your vote is even counted? You're just trusting that they count your vote. You have no idea. If you'd voted on the blockchain, you could know. This is a very simple example, and it's not how it would actually work, because there are other things with identity, but in theory, if you ran a vote on the blockchain, let's say it was a local election, and the results are 1 million votes to 1.2 million votes. The entity could publish, here's all of the addresses of the people who voted 1 million. There's exactly 1 million of them. And here's all the addresses of people that voted 1.2 million, and it all sums up to 1.2. And I could take my address that I know, no one else knows unless I give it to them. I can copy it and paste it and go find it. Yep, it's in there. It's part of the 1.2 million. Cool, it counted. You have no idea if your vote counts right now. But these are things where, like, there's identity issues with that, which have been solved. So these applications are, in theory, we could run voting. It takes some infrastructure, but we could run voting today on chain with identity protection. But things like that just make it just trustless, again, more transparent. And then philanthropy, like nonprofits, right? When they receive funds, they kind of just say where they sent the money to. Yes, they have to file tax returns, and they claim they paid the money for this, but what if you could track it on chain? I send, this nonprofit takes in 5 Bitcoin. They say they spent 4 Bitcoin on this. Cool, prove it. Here's the transaction. I sent 4 Bitcoin to this organization's address. Yes, they confirm it's their address. And you can see me sending 4 of it there. Great. Now I know you spent the money there instead of on, generic G&A overhead. Okay, so privacy. Privacy is not a dirty word. Privacy is normal. That is a key theme of our company. Privacy is normal. So why privacy? It's a basic human right. It is protected by the 4th Amendment in the U.S. You can't scrub blockchain data. Once all these transactions anyone is making on Bitcoin or Ethereum, et cetera, they are out in the public forever. They will never go away. I can scrub my internet history if I want to, for the most part. You can't go delete stuff off the Bitcoin blockchain because millions of people around the world have a copy of it, and it's impossible to delete it. So that's an issue, especially as AI accelerates here. In the not so distant future, I might be able to just type into ChatGPT and say, hey, here's this Bitcoin address with 10 million bucks in it. Who owns it? Link me to their Facebook profile. What's their address? Show me their face. Show me their kids. Where do they vacation? All this stuff. And that, you can quickly see why that can be a problem with all this public blockchains. And so, again, privacy isn't about hiding. It's about choosing what to disclose and to whom. You know, the whole privacy is only for criminals thing is completely false. It's such a uneducated or intentionally misleading talking point. I mean, who here closes their blinds at night? Who shuts the door when you go to the restroom? Like, are you doing anything illegal, or do you just want privacy? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I don't show my bank account balance, every transaction I've ever made in my life, to the cashier when I pay for it. But if you pay her with Bitcoin, that's what you're doing. She can see your balance. She can see every transaction you've ever made. And then in crypto, they have what's called the $5 wrench attack. If you can take all the privacy precautions in the world, but if I just paid my buddy or the cashier, $20 in Bitcoin, and he's like, oh, cool, let me check that on the blockchain. Oh, he has $8 million in there. I'm gonna take a $5 wrench, and I'm gonna go out to the parking lot and give me your $8 million, or I'll hit you over the head with this. And you're gonna do it. You're gonna give up the money. So privacy it's not about hiding. It's about, again, choosing what to disclose and to whom. So leads me to my company, Electric Coin Company. We created what's called Zcash. It's essentially Bitcoin with privacy. Forked from the same code base, launched back in 2016, and it functions as a true currency. We've kept our fees low, but it's private. It has optional transparency. I can send a transparent transaction if I want to, if I want to prove a donation, if I want to prove a political campaign donation, etc. But it has also a 21 million hard supply cap, just like Bitcoin. And how does it get privacy? It's via these what's called zero knowledge proofs. Extremely advanced. Obviously, I just know enough to be dangerous here, but a zero knowledge proof is a way for me to prove something to you without you knowing anything about me or anything about, you just know that it's true. You don't know any of the details. So I use the example of like going to a bar. When you go into a bar, what does the bartender need to know? He doesn't even need to know how old you are. He has to know that you're 21 or older. He doesn't care if you're 21 today or if you're 100. It doesn't matter. They don't need to know that. But what do you tell them? You tell them your name, your address, your birthday, et cetera. Like, he just needs to know, are you 21 or older? Yes or no. That's the only piece of like doing that online, but their way to prove something without, he won't know my birthday, he won't know my age, he won't know my address, my height, my weight, whatever. He will just know I'm 21 plus. And it's a really cool problem that we solved. 10 years ago, we tried to add it to Bitcoin. Bitcoin said they didn't want it anymore, even though Satoshi did want it. One of his last forum posts was like, man, if I could figure out how to add zero knowledge proofs in Bitcoin, it would be a perfect private currency, but I just can't figure out how it's possible. So in the bottom one, we just, unstoppable private money is kind of our tagline. Again, privacy is actually essential for national security, right? No nation wants to see their citizens' data open available to foreign governments. Like, people think, the whole privacy for criminals thing doesn't make sense. Like, why would you want our data exposed to foreign adversaries? It doesn't make sense. We need privacy as a nation as well. Okay, so some risks and misconceptions, and you want to cut me off? Yeah, okay, all right.
No, I'm not going to go out. We're to save the questions. Can you stay for a few
minutes?
Yeah,
of course.
Ask the questions?
Yep, absolutely. So sorry for taking so long.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just want to get some of these people I know out of here on time, but please feel free to stick around, stop up, ask questions. But Tony, we want to thank you for coming in and appreciate the invitation. And with that, you are dismissed.